It's Burn It Down with Kim Brown. You guys can check us out here every Tuesday and Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Please like the videos, subscribe to the channel. We are only 350 subscribers away from 6,000. So help us get to that next level, please, and thank you. And you guys, one consistent theme that we have been discussing here on this platform since its inception has been what to do to combat police violence and police occupations of Black and Brown communities. And I'd like to bring to the screen a member of the Black Alliance for Peace Baltimore's coordinating team. Sister Sheena is joining us today to talk to us about what BAP Baltimore is doing to inform and organize Baltimore City folks, to let them know about these cop city plans and why they need to be stopped. And Sister Sheena, is it Goddess Crew? Is it Goddess Crew?
I will go by Sister Sheena for now, but that is still me.
Got it. Got it. All right, Sister Sheena, let's go. So thank you so much for making the time to join us. It was a nice pleasure to meet you the other week at Nomu Nomu when Ricky got the revolutionary ride delivered, and we have a video of that. We haven't played it here because I wanted to send it to Ricky first, but you guys are hilarious. Let me say it about Baltimore youths, young, and I say youths, endearingly, but y'all are a funny bunch. So welcome to BIDWKB. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. That was a very hilarious day. The middle of that screening, we hear that, come outside and look, don't make it a scene, just come outside. I'm just like, okay. And then next scene, I'm like, Kim?
I want to tell the story about that. But I'll tell the story another day because it was really a somewhat comedy of errors because y'all popped out and way before we was ready because we hopped out to smoke. We're like, all right, we're gonna smoke, and then we're gonna go in there. We're gonna tell Ricky it's hell to come outside, and then boom, next thing I know, turn around, Ricky's already on the block trying to do the same shit we were doing. And I was like, oh shit. Anyway. So Wally, hold on, let me get refocused here. So but before we get into the event that's happening on Saturday, July the 20th, talk to us first for those that do not know what Black Alliance for Peace is, and even more specifically what the Baltimore chapter does. Can you tell everybody what Black Alliance for Peace is as an organization and the kind of issues that you organize around?
Well, BAP Baltimore is part of the nationwide Black Alliance for Peace, and we are doing our very best to rekindle the Black radical anti-war tradition. And as far as what BAP Baltimore does is focus on the domestic imperialism that we undergo, which is militarized policing. So our No Compromise, No Retreat campaign is trying to defeat the war on African Black people in the US and abroad. That's the entire campaign. And so what BAP Baltimore focuses on, of course, is the domestic while tying it into the global. So the imperialism that's being fought abroad is the same type of imperialism when you've got local police and law enforcement agencies training with the IDF, when you've got them doing stuff like receiving goods from the 1033 program. They're receiving surplus military equipment that has done tours in like Iraq and come back home and been demilitarized, and is being used in residential neighborhoods, in urban communities for stuff like riot control and things like that. So we're staunchly against that on a local level. And of course, we have comrades doing their part abroad. There are delegations where we see colonized people in other countries facing the much broader imperialism that would take place in like a Haiti, that would sanction a Nicaragua, that would reach far beyond just outside of our door, but still have those implications, because when those people are fleeing domestic crises at their home, they become refugees, and they will often end up over here trying to seek asylum and escape the hostile situations created by this government and the military causing ruckus over there.
So, in the same way that the US military has hundreds of bases around the world, the way that they have military operations centered in Africa, in the Caribbean, in Latin America, these compounds, as they were, are are being built right here. And going even beyond what we think of as a police training academy, these cop cities themselves are many cities as advertised, right? Like with, full city urban landscapes. And there's no assumption. The only conclusion is that these police are receiving this kind of urban warfare training in order to deploy against people right here in this country. So we have seen on our related platform, Black Liberation Media, formerly BPM, our comrade Kamal Franklin, and many organizations out of Atlanta organize and really try hard to stop the cop city in Atlanta. I believe the construction is still moving forward. The resistance against it still continues. So, talk to us about what has been proposed for a cop city in Baltimore and tell us who has proposed it.
So last year, we received the word that Nick Mosby, the president of the Baltimore City Council, has been pushing for a cop city as a sort of legacy project. But when we saw the number was $330 million, a city like Baltimore definitely has better use for that money than a cop training facility. And as he's making the case for it being necessary, while the city is literally crumbling in areas, while schools are going unfunded, while the communities themselves have a bunch of abandoned buildings, while there are no grocery stores present, while there is so much that people need, an institution to better train the police in how to abuse the rights of the Black and African residents there just seemed absurd to all of us. So we did jump in early with denouncing this announcement. And though he continues to try to drum up support for it, Maryland as a whole is basically, opening the coffers, so to speak, for the institutions of law enforcement and seeking very much to make this police state a much stronger version of itself.
And to me, there's a version proposed of this in PG County, but make it the FBI headquarters where the county executive who is running for the US Senate, her name is Angela Also Brooks, everybody. We've mentioned Angie on here a couple times. But she is all in favor, along with Westmore and the whole Blackness Leadership delegation, to have the FBI build its headquarters across a sprawling multi-acre campus in which a similar, mini training facility would be there as well. So it's coming to everywhere Black, it would seem, in Maryland, like the blackest area. Oh, they need a cop city of some kind down there. So where does this stand right now? You mentioned that, that BAP is organizing against this. When you guys are informing the community with your political education, what is a response that the folks have been giving you when made aware that this is in the works?
So initially we wrote a statement about the cop city, and then as well as producing like palm cards and QR codes. You can go to the website blackallianceforpeace.com and read some of these statements. The ongoing fight against it, it seemed like as soon as the announcement for that cop city came through, there was a boil water advisory in Baltimore City. So there was a statement about that. So there's crumbling infrastructure. There's all these issues in Baltimore City right now. And the fact that that money has already been slated, I think in March of this year, there was also a $1 billion jail, which is not just a jail. It's a multi-purpose facility that includes mental health, quote unquote, and drug treatment. But it's still a $1 billion jail. That is absolutely part of it. So all of this funding can be allocated to ways to police and repress African and Black people in the city. But when a major city in this country is boiling water, just after hearing that they plan to have, a new cop city built, it does make you question how important are the needs of the masses and how important is it to cave to like the Fraternal Order of Police? How important is it that misleadership erect these, permanent surveillance structures and assemble all of these forces to consolidate and train not just local law enforcement, but this would be a place that people can come from out of town. As we already said, they already train with the IOF. The Deadly Exchange Program allows them to take these, we'll call them leisure trips, to go learn more repressive and brutal tactics and then use them on the next batch of Keith Davis Jr.'s, Freddie Gray's, whoever they can think of. And the fact that this is them working across the aisle and the country and the globe to do these things is definitely a reason that BAP Baltimore took interest in it immediately, because Nick Mosby is nobody's friend, much like Angela also Brooks is nobody's friend, much like Ivan Bates. Any of these misleadership figures are doing the bidding of the empire. They are capitulating to the demands of capitalism. And if you do not serve that interest, you can become a casualty. And that is what our occupied communities are. We are in this ongoing war, and they want to suppress us to the point that we feel that our ability to fight it is futile, that we are not able to overpower it because they've already invested so much capital that the only thing we can do is comply or die.
So wise people have said that you can tell a government's priorities by what they fund. And in Baltimore, which is not no exception to other cities and places across the country, but Baltimore specifically funds Baltimore Police Department well above other government services, beyond the Baltimore Public Schools, beyond Baltimore Parks and Recs, a lot of things. But you mentioned Baltimore as being a food desert, and that is a violence on the people that is as extreme and as urgent as addressing police violence and brutality. Can you help us put those connections together as to why the food insecurity in Baltimore is as an extreme dire condition that people in the city face, in addition to dealing with the cops?
Yes, so in the city of Baltimore, they have almost 2 times the statewide rate of food insecurity. So it's about 28%. And that's just Baltimore. You know, for the state, it's still pretty high, but for African Americans throughout the state, it's about 21%. For the state itself, it's about 15%. And that's all of the state. But for Baltimore City to far exceed the state level, and most of Baltimore City is poor, working class African people. So for them to have all of this passion to fund these things which harm Black people, which harm those communities, which can't get food, which don't have a grocery store, which don't have fresh produce, which don't have a way to sustain themselves properly, it shows that the passion to criminalize these people matters far more than their ability to eat, to nourish themselves, to actually lead a decent quality of life, would include being able to feed yourselves, would include being able to drink unpoisoned water. And as we said, the infrastructure issues are not being prioritized. The fact that people are buying their groceries at a Dollar General or, a mom and pop carry out type situation, because when you go to Baltimore City, the major corporations that are there aren't exactly there because they're not investing in those communities due to who they feel is worth investing in. Sadly, they would rather contribute more money to the war on poor and working class people than to investing in those communities that would actually, in our minds, would nullify those issues, because people in a place without resources are forced to do many things, sometimes illicit, otherwise just what is already deemed criminal. Because if you're too poor to afford food and you might get caught stealing a bag of chips, are you stealing because you like crime, or are you stealing because you need to eat? And sadly, the investment in crime prevention, surveillance technology, procuring weapons through the 1033 program, all of this leaves far too many people to slip through the cracks. And those cracks are the size of fissures. At this point, it's like an earthquake just fell through, and everybody is falling through the cracks if they cannot afford to climb out of that disparate poverty that deeply entrenches them, even though we just discussed how much money can go towards to policing.
The way in which Baltimore has faced generational disinvestment, and it's really disgusting because Maryland is a wealthy state. And I always say Maryland is not as progressive as advertised, because look at the way Baltimore City is treated. Look how Baltimore is almost a pariah in the state, and it's the state's biggest city. And they deprioritize improving it in any way, and they are so invested in the criminalization of its citizens, even just for existing. When the consent decree report came out from the DOJ after the uprisings in 2015, I mean, the rates of stop and frisk for Baltimoreans was just astronomical. I think almost, what, 750,000 folks was stopped and frisked, which means people were stopped and frisked multiple times. And it's like, why don't y'all could do that, or you could put the red line in so people have access to public transportation, or you could invest in Baltimore public schools so that children can actually drink out of the water fountain, that they don't have to freeze to death in the winter and burn up in the summertime. It's preposterous. But I want us to talk about the event that is happening this Saturday, July the 20th in Baltimore. Can you give us the details about it, and what do y'all want the people to come out and do?
So as I mentioned, we've been doing education around it. So it began as statements, but then we started doing town halls. Tomorrow is going to be our fifth town. Is the fifth town hall? Well, it's going to be another town hall that BAP Baltimore is doing. Our citywide alliance has done a series of town halls, and this one is called Towards a Food Sovereign Future, where we discuss the food deserts, the fact that so much of this funding is not going to making sure people are fed, to making sure that people actually not only have access to, but have a relationship with food production in their community. Because it's not just enough to be able to get to a store if what you're getting from the store isn't even good or nourishing food. So at this town hall at the Payne Memorial AME Church, we will be discussing with community organizers who work closely with food production, who understand the implications of living in an internal colony that doesn't produce food, which is surveilled, which is heavily occupied by forces who don't really care if you eat or not, because that ability to determine how you take care of yourself is stolen from so many of us. We want people to come out and really try to understand the opportunity that we have to actually reclaim our ability to say what we're going to do for ourselves, among ourselves, instead of watching the future be stolen right from under us because they're offering so much money to the war machine.
So, Sister Sheena, before I let you go, I know a number of your comrades are in Nicaragua marking the anniversary of the Sandinistas. I, I, you don't have to give us a dissertation on the Sandinistas, but I mean, if you could briefly explain, number one, why they're there, and why they felt as though they should be there as Black folks from America. Why are they there in Nicaragua marking this anniversary?
So Nicaragua is a very, very revolutionary country. Having been to the embassy a few times and spoken with Ambassador Sandino a few times, like, they're very proud of their revolution. Nicaragua has two autonomous zones, one for the indigenous and one for Afro-Nicaraguans. Nicaragua is also 90% food sovereign. And despite the sanctions and the aggression that Western nations have shown to them, they are doing an amazing job at not only defending the revolution, but making sure that the people of Nicaragua have those rights, have that security, have a say in their democracy. While you see right here at home, we are not in a position to do the same thing. I just discussed being 90% food sovereign in a nation that people don't probably know that about. The autonomous regions for the indigenous and African community in that country. Meanwhile, where are the autonomous regions for Africans here? It's definitely not PG County. I'm a native, it's not here. It's not Bowie, it's not in Muriel Bowser's DC, it's not in Baltimore City, so getting a chance to be in a place where people not only have their freedom but can exercise those freedoms in a way that actually impacts their material condition in real time is so important for all of us to actually get out of the experience. It's not tourism. I mean, they're they're in meetings too over in Nicaragua, but it's such a different reality. It's so different to actually be in those fields where they are producing their own food. It's so different being in a country where people are satisfied with the way the government treats them and the way the government is enacting policy that affects them. And so that's an important reason why they're on the delegation. And hopefully I get to go as well. I didn't make it this year, but more opportunities will come.
A place where people have 90% food sovereignty and they're happy with their government policies. I cannot conceive of such a place because I have never experienced such a place. It's like, where are we in the magical land of Oz, except making Nicaragua? All right. Well, I'm convinced, but I appreciate you making the time to join us today, Sister Sheena from the Black Alliance for Peace, Baltimore, a member of the coordinating team. Please follow BAP Baltimore on all socials so you can get the information. Do you have the address of Payne Memorial Church
Yes.
in front of you?
Payne Memorial Church is at 1714 Madison Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21217.
So be sure to check that out. Check out all the events BAP Baltimore has going. Please follow them so you can be aware of the next installation in the Town Hall series. Sister Sheena, thank you so much for joining us on Burn It Down with Kim Brown. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Peace.
Peace, peace, peace. You guys.